I laugh at things that aren't funny now, not because they land, but because silence feels heavier than fake laughter. The room keeps buzzing with voices that skim the surface, trading memes and weekend plans, while inside me, a thought is screaming in slow motion. It's like being awake in a dream where everyone else is sleepwalking, smiling, nodding, surviving, and I can't tell if I'm the ghost or if they are. The coffee's gone cold again. Second time today. I reheated it once, convinced that warmth could fool me into thinking I was still here. But even hot coffee doesn't cure the frost of a room where your words have nowhere to land. I told a friend I was fine earlier. They smiled, relieved. I almost believed myself too. But later, staring at the mug sweating on my desk, I knew I had lied. Not to them, to me. There's a strange cruelty in carrying thoughts too big for the room. You end up shrinking yourself, filing the edges of your mind so you don't cut anyone else with it. You scroll endlessly, hoping someone has written the thought you've been too afraid to say aloud. Sometimes you find it buried in a late-night Reddit post or whispered by a stranger in a podcast. And it feels like proof that you're not insane, not broken, just unseen. But then the screen goes dark, and you're left with your reflection staring back, a pixelated ghost trapped behind glass. I used to be loud about the things I loved. I'd quote philosophers at the dinner table like they were punchlines, scribble my own notes in the margins of books, dance with ideas until they wore me out. Somewhere now I keep them folded inside, like fragile letters never mailed. Maybe I'm protecting them. Or maybe I'm just afraid no one would write back. When did I stop being the person who filled silence with questions? And when did I start being the one who hides them? Afraid of the look in someone's eye when I go too deep, too soon? Last night I typed a message in the group chat. Does anyone ever feel like time isn't moving right? Like we're scrolling, but not living? I stared at the blinking cursor. Then I deleted it. Typed again, anyone awake? Deleted, again. Instead, I dropped a meme, a safe one. They all laughed. I laughed too. And in that moment, I realized I wasn't hiding my loneliness, I was performing it. Sometimes I wonder if that's what exile really is. Not being banished to the desert, but sitting among people you love and still feeling like a foreign language. You translate yourself down to something palatable. You keep your metaphors simple. You silence the ache before it slips out. And when you finally lay in bed, your mind starts screaming the paragraphs you swallowed all day. That's when the ghosting starts. Not of them, of yourself. I ghost my own thoughts now. I feel them rise like a tide, ready to spill out, and I block them at the door. Too much? Not now. Who would even care? And every time I do, I lose a little piece of me. It's funny in a way. We all talk about being ghosted by people, by lovers, by friends, but no one tells you how devastating it is to be ghosted by your own soul. There's an irony in it. I scroll past endless noise, craving depth, but when I finally reach for it, I pull back. Like touching fire. What if I speak and no one understands? What if I ask and the room goes quiet? What if my need for connection proves that I am, in fact, alone? That's the paradox of exile. It feels safer than risking rejection. Safer to pretend you're fine. Safer to laugh at the joke. Safer to nod and say, yeah, I'm good. But there's danger in safety. Safety has teeth, because silence doesn't stay neutral forever. It starts eroding you. Every unsent message, every backspace thought, every coffee gone cold without company, it chips away at the sense that you even exist. And maybe that's what Kierkegaard meant. Solitude can be sacred, yes. But solitude stretched too long turns from prayer to punishment. Tonight, as I sit here with the half-drunk cup, phone glowing like a false moon beside me, I realize something that stings. I'm not just alone. I'm exiled inside my own head. And exile is lonelier when you chose it yourself. There's a message that still sits unsent in my drafts. Just 12 words. Nothing dramatic, nothing poetic. Just a simple human question. Do you ever feel like no one really sees you? I typed it weeks ago. My thumb hovered over send for a minute that felt like an hour. Then I closed the app. No goodbye, no explanation, just silence. And somehow that silence hurt more than any rejection, because silence has no evidence. You can't screenshot it. You can't explain it to anyone. It just evaporates. I used to fill notebooks with thoughts I couldn't say out loud. Now, I fill my notes app with lines I'll never show anyone. It's strange the words still come, but they're locked in a glass box. I reread them sometimes, as if checking to see if I still exist. And I do, but barely. Here's the part no one warns you about. Loneliness isn't just the absence of people. It's the absence of recognition. You can be surrounded roommates, group chats, family dinners, and still feel like the only person underwater, watching everyone else breathe freely. They ask, "How was your day?" And you answer with safe syllables. Good, busy, fine. But inside, your chest is burning with questions you know they won't understand. When did fine become the only translation you trusted? I start typing something honest, then delete it. Too much. I open my mouth at dinner, ready to share a thought that's been haunting me all week, then I swallow it with the food. I read a line of philosophy that nearly breaks me in two, and I glance around the room, aching to share it. No one looks up, so I highlight it, save it, archive it, hide it in a folder called Someday. Maybe that's what loneliness really is, an endless folder of unsaid things. It's not that people don't care, they do, but care without understanding feels like pity. And pity feels like distance in disguise. I can't tell you how many times I've nodded along, smiling at jokes, keeping my depth folded inside. I wonder if they know if anyone notices the tiny betrayals I commit against myself every time I choose silence over honesty. Maybe they don't. Maybe that's the point. Let me confess something awkward. Sometimes I test people. I'll drop a line too heavy for the conversation just to see if anyone will catch it. Last week, a friend asked what I was thinking about. I said, "Time feels weird lately, like it's moving, but we're not." They laughed, said, "That's deep," and changed the subject. I laughed too. But inside, a piece of me folded smaller, like origami no one wanted to unfold. The micro-griefs pile up. Small betrayals, tiny silences, invisible wounds. 1. The deleted thought. You type a message you'll never send. Proof that you once wanted connection, now buried under backspace. 2. The highlighted line. You underline a passage that could save you, but there's no one to read it with you. The ink becomes a secret diary. 3. The safe smile. You laugh at a joke that stings, because defending yourself feels like being too much. 4. The nod that lies you answer, "Fine," when the truth is anything but. You've rehearsed it so many times it feels like your name. These aren't catastrophes, they're just droplets. But droplets wear down stone. Sometimes I wonder, am I disappearing? Not physically, not even socially, but spiritually. Am I slowly dissolving into a version of myself that only exists in safe, shallow water? And if I am, how long before the real me drowns? There's a phrase people throw around online. Rent-free in my head. Usually it's about an ex or a song you can't stop humming. But here's the truth. Loneliness lives rent-free in my head. Every silence, every unsent message, every safe smile. They play on loop, like a playlist I can't stop replaying. It's exhausting. It's invisible. And it's mine. I know what some would say. Just find your people. As if it were that simple. As if souls were items on a shelf you could pick up and try on. But deep thinkers don't find people in crowds. They find them in cracks and late-night whispers, in the pause before a goodbye, in the line of a book someone else underlined too. Until then, we ache, quietly. The worst part, sometimes I doubt myself. Maybe I am too much. Maybe I really am the one who complicates simple things. Maybe I've mistaken depth for distance, and the truth is, I don't know how to belong. But then I remember, exile is not a verdict. It's a state, and states can shift. That night I remembered a line, not a quote I was searching for, not a passage I underlined. It just appeared, like a whisper that had been waiting in the shadows. Even the deepest thinker cannot live only in solitude. Truth still longs for a voice to answer it. I sat there, staring at the half-lit room, and for a moment it felt less like philosophy and more like a mirror. Because if what I carried was truth, then silence was not strength. Silence was slow erasure. There's something terrifying about realizing your own mind has been eating itself alive. I used to wear solitude like a badge proof that I could survive on my own. But survival isn't the same as living. Survival is the performance of strength when you're starving for recognition. I told myself I didn't need anyone, but the truth, I wasn't noble. I was disappearing. I don't think we talk enough about how silence can be addictive. At first, it feels safer, like armor. Don't say too much. Don't risk being misunderstood. Just stay quiet. But then silence grows comfortable, like a bed you never leave. You stop speaking not because you have nothing to say, but because you no longer believe anyone is listening. And that's when the lantern flickers out. Not because the flame died, but because it's suffocated. It's strange how philosophy finds you in the middle of collapse. I wasn't studying Kierkegaard. I wasn't searching for wisdom. I was scrolling, backspacing messages on numbing out. And then, out of nowhere, that line appeared in my memory. Almost like the words were alive. Almost like they wanted to be heard too. And suddenly, I saw myself clearly. Every unsent message, every backspace thought, every I'm fine that meant I'm empty. It wasn't maturity. It wasn't resilience. It was exile dressed as control. I laughed a little, the ironic kind, the kind that stings more than crying. Because here I was, pretending I didn't need anyone while secretly craving a single person who could look at me and say, I know what you mean. It's ridiculous, isn't it? We call it independence, but it's really just desperation in disguise. I whispered it to myself. Fake strength, real loneliness. There's a viral phrase people use, ghosted and haunted. That's exactly what it feels like. I ghosted my own thoughts to survive, and now I'm haunted by the silence that followed. I thought I was safe, but I was just building a coffin out of quiet. I keep thinking of the lantern. Maybe every deep thinker carries one, a fragile, flickering flame of thought. Alone, it burns dim, but in community, it grows. The problem is, how do you find the others? Where do you place the lantern so it can be seen without being mocked or ignored or blown out? The silence didn't answer me, but the whisper of Kierkegaard lingered, almost daring me to try. What if truth doesn't just want to be spoken? What if it wants to be heard? What if the reason I feel half alive is because truth can't breathe in exile? That thought scared me, because it meant solitude was no longer noble. It was dangerous. If I didn't change, I wouldn't just be alone. I'd forget how to exist at all. I sat in the glow of my phone that night, watching the candle on my desk flicker. It felt like a metaphor that was too on the nose, the kind of thing you'd roll your eyes at if it were in a movie. But sometimes life is heavy-handed like that. The candle bent with the draft, almost dying, then straightened again, and I realized I was the candle, bent, threatened, barely breathing, but still here. That's when the line shifted from memory to mirror. Even the deepest thinker cannot live only in solitude. It wasn't advice. It was a warning. If truth longs for a voice to answer it, then maybe my silence isn't just hurting me. Maybe it's betraying the truth itself. And if that's true, then exile isn't just exile. It's theft. I don't know what scared me more, the thought of being misunderstood or the thought of never being understood at all. But as the candle flickered, I felt a strange ache in my chest, like something inside me whispering, "Find the others," or "be erased." I used to think belonging was something you stumbled into. A party, a classroom, a group chat you arrive. You laugh, you blend in. Easy, natural. But for people like us, the ones who think too deep, too loud, too heavy, belonging isn't something that arrives. It's something you have to build, one fragile brick at a time. And that's terrifying. Because what if you build the wrong house? What if no one comes? I think about lanterns a lot, how each of us carries one small, flickering, fragile. When you walk alone, it's enough to keep you from falling into the dark, but just barely. If you find another lantern, though suddenly the shadows shrink. That's what I'm searching for. Not a crowd, just a circle, not noise, just recognition. The truth is, deep thinkers rarely find their people on the main stage. Not on the trending feed, not in the loudest rooms. The side rooms are where it happens, the tucked-away discords, the philosophy subreddits. The late-night podcasts with too few listeners but too much heart. Those spaces may look empty from the outside, but if you walk in carrying your lantern, you might see another glow in the corner. And sometimes, belonging isn't about finding, it's about signaling. When you sit in a coffee shop with Kierkegaard open, when you scribble in the margins of a notebook, when you dare to drop a thought that feels too much, you're not just being yourself, you're sending a flare. Someone will notice. Someone always does. It's risky, of course. Not everyone who notices will understand. But some will, and that's enough. I learned something else. Circles aren't built around answers. They're built around questions. Think about it. The best conversations aren't when everyone agrees or when someone teaches. They're when someone whispers, "Has anyone else felt this?" And suddenly, the room exhales. What if we built groups like that, living question circles? One haunting thought per person. No solutions required, just the relief of carrying it together. I'll admit, part of me laughed when I first imagined that. It sounded like something straight out of a TikTok caption. Situationships, but for thoughts. Casual, no pressure, no labels, just vibes. But maybe that's what we need, spaces where we don't perform intelligence, we just share the weight of thinking. Because sometimes fake love turns into real feelings. And maybe fake small talk, done honestly, can turn into real connection. Here's the part I resisted for so long. Ritual matters. Depth doesn't survive in randomness. You can't expect meaning to show up if you only leave the door cracked once every few months. But when you anchor a rhythm one night a week, same corner of the cafe, same circle of questions, something shifts. Consistency turns the ordinary into sacred. And don't underestimate the scale. We're trained to think bigger is better, more followers, more likes, more people at the table. But numbers don't equal depth. I've felt more alive in a 3-person conversation than in a room full of hundreds. 3 voices, 1 silence, and suddenly you realize, oh, I'm not insane. I'm just me. The truth is, building these spaces is scary. It feels like standing in the middle of a dark field, raising your lantern, hoping someone else will raise theirs back. But maybe that's the only way. Because if you don't risk it, your light stays dim. And dim light, well, it keeps you alive. But it doesn't help you live. So I made a quiet promise to myself. I will risk the signal. I will seek the side rooms. I will carry my questions out loud, even if they tremble. And maybe, just maybe, someone will answer back. I keep coming back to the notebook on my desk. pages full of questions I never asked out loud. Tonight, I underlined one and left it open, just in case. Because who knows, maybe tomorrow someone will see it. And maybe tomorrow. My lantern won't be the only one burning. If I stay silent, my thoughts will wither into private echoes. If I keep scrolling, my soul will flatten into noise. And if I don't seek my circle, one day I'll forget why I ever began thinking at all. That's the danger no one talks about. Not heartbreak, not rejection, not even loneliness. The real danger is self-erasure. I used to believe exile was temporary, a season. But lately I fear it's becoming an identity. I say less, I smile more. I hide my notebooks. And slowly, the person who once lit up at questions is being replaced by someone who only performs the answers people want to hear. It's not that anyone silenced me. It's that I've been silencing myself. And that truth tastes bitter in my mouth. Sometimes I imagine my younger self walking in and seeing me now. The kid who once stayed up all night writing in the margins of books, certain that words could change the world. What would they say seeing me shrink? Seeing me swallow my thoughts just to keep peace? I think they'd cry. Not because I failed, but because I forgot. There's a phrase people throw around online. Quiet quitting. Usually about work. But sometimes I wonder, haven't I been quiet quitting myself? Fading out little by little. Smiling, nodding, saying, fine. Hoping someone would notice. But they didn't. And maybe that's the hardest truth. No one will notice if you disappear while still standing in the room. The irony is sharp. I wanted to be safe. I thought safety was silence. But silence became its own danger, like leaving a wound unbandaged until it infects everything. It's funny in the saddest way. I thought silence was protecting me. Instead, it was slowly deleting me. If I don't change, I'll end up like one of those ghost profiles online, still visible, still technically alive, but abandoned, muted, forgotten, scrolling but not living, breathing but not belonging, existing but not existing. The truth? Sometimes I feel like I've already started disappearing. Little signs. I stop correcting people when they misquote me. I let jokes that sting slide past. I rehearse I'm good until it's muscle memory. None of it feels catastrophic. But add them up, and suddenly I'm not sure who's left in the mirror. This is what's at stake. Not just connection, not just friendship. What's at stake is my selfhood. The version of me that once burned with questions, with wonder, with words that demanded to be written. If I keep quiet, that version dies. And the tragedy isn't that no one else will miss them. The tragedy is that I will forget they ever existed. It shouldn't be funny, but sometimes it is. Like last night, I sat on the kitchen floor eating instant noodles at 2 a.m., scrolling through memes I didn't even laugh at. I caught my reflection in the microwave door and whispered, "This is not what we meant when we said main character energy." I laughed. Then I cried. Then I laughed again, because sometimes collapse wears a hoodie of humor. Kierkegaard said truth longs for a voice to answer it. I wonder, what happens if no one answers mine? Does my truth fade into nothingness? Or worse, does it rot inside me, turning me bitter, small, unrecognizable? If I don't change, I lose more than connection. I lose the thread of me. And the danger of that loss is existential. Because once you've forgotten yourself, how do you ever come back? So I sit here tonight with the lantern on my desk dimming, and I ask myself the question I've avoided. If I don't change, what will I lose that no one can give back? I used to believe solitude made me strong. I told myself I was built for it, that I didn't need anyone else to validate the weight of my thoughts. But strength isn't silence. And tonight, I'm beginning to see it. Silence is only strong until it starts erasing you. I stare at the candle on my desk. It's small, almost pitiful wax spilling over the side, flame trembling with every draft. But still, it burns. I think about how long I've sat in this room alone, pretending the dim glow was enough. And maybe it was, until I remembered Kierkegaard's whisper. Truth longs for a voice to answer it, and what's a lantern if it never lights another? So I did something small, almost laughably small. I took one of the questions from my notebook, the kind I usually keep buried, the kind I usually highlight in silence, and I wrote it down on a piece of paper. Just one line. When did you stop feeling like yourself? I folded it once, put it in my pocket, and carried it into the world. The world didn't transform. There was no divine chorus, no lightning bolt of connection. But there was a moment. In a cafe waiting for coffee, I pulled the paper out and read it again. A stranger sitting nearby glanced at it, then glanced at me. They didn't say anything, but their eyes softened, like maybe they'd been carrying the same question too. It was just a flicker, barely anything, but in that flicker, I felt less erased. Because belonging doesn't always arrive in applause or declarations. Sometimes it's just a pause, a look, a shared silence that says, "Me too." I think we expect belonging to feel loud laughter in crowded rooms, hugs that swallow us whole. And yes, sometimes it is. But for thinkers, for wanderers, for the ones who carry lanterns, belonging feels quieter. It feels like another glow in the corner, faint but steady. It feels like someone underlining the same line in a book you thought no one else would ever read. It feels like breathing again. I've realized now, exile wasn't just forced on me. I chose it too. I thought silence was safety. But maybe safety was never the point. Maybe the point was risk, the trembling, terrifying risk of carrying my lantern where someone else might see. And here's what I've learned. Circles aren't found. They're built. One question, one pause. One flicker of recognition at a time. You don't need hundreds. You don't even need 10. Sometimes 3 voices are enough to make you feel like your own voice matters again. The candle on my desk is still burning, but now I imagine another candle beside it, then another, then another. Not a bonfire, not fireworks, just a table of small flames, steady and unafraid. And I understand what Kierkegaard meant: solitude can refine you, but only community can remind you you're real. I'm in my healing era now. Not the loud, aesthetic kind the internet sells, not glow-ups or morning routines. My healing era is quieter, writing down one question and daring to share it, sitting with others in silence and letting it mean something, drinking cold coffee together without apologizing for being too much. Healing isn't performance. Healing is presence. So here's my offering, not advice, not a sermon, just a ritual. Take one question you can't shake. Write it down. Share it with one person you trust. Don't demand an answer. Don't even expect a response. Just let it breathe outside of you. That's how lanterns find each other. That's how exile begins to end. I used to think the universe was silent, that it watched, but never spoke. But lately, I wonder if it's been answering all along in strangers' glances, in underlined books, in circles that quietly form when you dare to begin. The answers aren't thunder, they're whispers. And if you lean close enough, you'll hear, you're not alone. The candle stays lit tonight, not because I forced it, but because I finally stopped guarding it alone. Exile feels softer now, less like punishment, more like passage. And maybe, just maybe, my lantern isn't the only one burning anymore. I thought I had to perform strength, but grace doesn't need performance, it just needs presence. So tonight, I let the lantern burn not to prove, not to fight, not to be seen, but simply to be. Even the faintest lantern grows brighter when it's no longer burning alone,